I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience with the 60s scoop here, and I found these letters that I have dragged out. So the first one, and you know that I've mentioned before, people talk about it as one thing, the 60s scoop. There were different phases of it, right? They weren't all the same. They had different, well, the objective was all the same, to remove us from our community and to destroy our community. That was it. And when I've said this to classes or students, sometimes they say, oh, that sounds so harsh. Well, yeah, you go around shooting people's parents, kidnapping them, and selling them over the border. That's selling, literally, $6,000 each. That was a lot of money in the 1960s. Yeah, that's harsh. So I've lit my little smudge as I talk just to calm myself down. uh, I think I went out under the third phase, which was the shortest one too. It only lasted a couple of years, and that was the most severe. And with that one, they still refused to open our records. I don't know why. I think I have an inkling why, and I'll talk about that though as we go along. So I was brought over the border and sold in the United States. I still can't get a Canadian passport, if you can believe it. Isn't that ridiculous? And when I called about getting one, I was told just because you're a status Indian doesn't mean that you're a Canadian citizen. Like, what planet do you live on? Yeah, it does. I actually replied, well, if I'm not Canadian, no one is. And he didn't like that. But it's the truth. I mean, if you're going to say something stupid, then expect a reply. Anyway, this was the first letter I got from the Collectiva. And we were told we only had so many days to. I don't know if you can read that. Dear 60 Scoop applicants, it says it's hard to get in focus. File number, they don't even have my name. Dear 60 Scoop applicant, you were sent a notice letter, notice of intent to reject, that said your application for compensation under the 60 Scoop settlement agreement may not be accepted. The reasons why you may not be accepted are explained in the notice letter. You have 45 days to address those issues. The 45 days have passed and we have not heard from you. Your application is at risk of being rejected. I never got that first letter. I would have kept it, I'm sure. And they were telling me I didn't have my original birth certificate. Well, of course not. That's what all of this was about. You kept my original birth certificate. How can I have access to it? I still don't. Uh, so I was getting really angry, of course, and we were getting ready to leave. I think it was in a day or two to Mexico. My spouse's father was dying of leukemia, and he did eventually. And I thought, oh my goodness, I have to do something. I think we were leaving the very next day, the next morning, in fact. And there was a number. I called the number, and then I know these people don't work verbally. They use it against you, actually, even though to us a verbal promise is the same as anything. It's your word. If your word isn't good, you're not good, period. If your word means nothing, then you mean nothing. That's the beginning and end of it. There's no way around that. So I thought, well, I better send an email too, which I did, and I explained at length what happened. Oh, you can't remember what day you crossed the border. Well, no, I was an infant. I don't remember. I didn't even know I was crossing a border. And I don't know. I wouldn't have been able to tell you where I ended up. And I responded to all of this. And then, when we came back from my father-in-law's funeral, there was this. As the court-appointed claims administrator in the 60 Scoop class action settlement, we are pleased to announce that the Federal Court of Canada and the Ontario Superior Court of Justice have released orders allowing for the issuance of a payment to you according to the settlement agreement. If be, and then we go down. Can you read that? Attached, you will find a check in the amount of $4,000, which is just beyond absolutely ludicrous. That was the second one. There are only two. This was the first one, which promises says that they'll be between 25 and 50. Nobody got that much. There was one check for 21,000, and then the second was for 4,000. But I think after all of that, what you did, to my community, to my family, to us. That's all that we're getting. That's it. Like that's and when I would say that, they would say, "Well, you can't put a price on this. Money doesn't." Well, maybe you could at least make it worthwhile. Like, make it enough so that I can live or buy a house or do something like that. How about that? Other people, if this happened to someone else, they'd have millions of dollars, right? But no, they don't. They don't do this, and that's the reason why things like, well, anyway, need to talk. So I thought for a while, and I called these people, and they included this with the settlement letter. So I said, I don't understand. Our record's open. I would like to find my family members. And they said, no, under your particular part of the 60 scoop phase of it, those records will remain sealed. And I said, may I ask? And they were really nice. They weren't rude. They were actually kind. And I said, may I ask why? And they wouldn't give me a direct answer. They just said, no, they're going to remain sealed. So I said, I don't really understand then what the settlement was if I can't be put in touch with my family members. How is this a settlement? And how is like a very small check that can't even buy a new car um, going to restore all the damage? And they again went, well, money's not going to restore the damage. Like, well, you know what? I didn't say it would, but you could at least do something that's going to make a change in my life. Um, so, how about the $6,000 and all of the interest it would have accumulated since 1967? How about that? But that they benefited from, right? They got that money for all of us. So I called, they did say, you know what some people are doing? They're going on these DNA websites. And the problem is, there has to be a family member of yours that's also on the website, or but a lot of people are having success with this because a lot of people that did have children taken, if they know about it, brothers and sisters, by this time my parents were dead, um, are also going on in hopes that someone will go on. And I asked them, which would you recommend? And I think he said, I spoke with two different people. I think he said, I don't know. I don't want to disappoint you, but I do know a lot of people have mentioned Ancestry DNA, but there are several of them. Maybe register with all of them. So I thought, okay, I'm going to register with Ancestry DNA. And I did. And I don't want to say I forgot about it, but it wasn't just foremost in my mind. I didn't have high hopes, entertain high hopes. And then, you get, if you've ever done that, the Ancestry DNA, right, you like spit into a little tube and add a chemical to it to keep it, preserve it. And that I think goes off to Ireland, is where it is, and they do the analysis there, and then they send it to your email. So I saw there was something from Ancestry, and it took me a whole day before I was strong enough to click it. I was just thinking, oh, there'll be nothing here. I clicked on it, and not right away, but almost, I was directed to well, it would be a cousin, and it tells you like the relationship of the person to you. So I did that, and it didn't really seem, she didn't respond. And then another cousin, and the same thing, she also did not respond. And then someone who would have been rather somewhat, I think, like a second cousin, and he did, and we talked on the phone, but he knew less than I did about anything. He was adopted out to, I think it was Florida, knew nothing about our people or language, or I at least had a bit of that advantage by having been around here for a while, having come back and so on. Been involved in ceremonial life and around our people. So I think he just was not feeling good and really wished to be able to connect. Then all of a sudden comes up a like a family hit, and that was my cousin, and she's been a faithful stay to me